My name is David Marcus. I'm the executive in charge of KQED Arts and Culture, KQED Food, and executive producer of Check Please Bay Area. And I'm delighted to welcome you tonight to KQED Live from the Commons in our newly renovated, newly reimagined headquarters right here in the Mission. KQED Live. It's a new multi-platform live event series dedicated to bringing journalism to life on stage, amplifying local culture, and building community. Our aim is to make, I just realized I'm allowed to take my mask off. I'm sorry. But we all have to keep them on when we're sitting in the crowd. Anyway, KQED Live, new multi-platform live event series dedicated to bringing journalism to life on stage, amplifying local culture, and building community. Our aim is to make KQED's mission to inform, inspire, and involve tangible. We do this through performances, conversations, storytelling, film screenings, food tastings, and other live interactive experiences. And importantly, we do this because in the act of gathering, we grow our collective sense of imagination, empathy, and responsibility. Now, before we get into tonight's program, and in the spirit of empathy and responsibility, I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Here at KQED headquarters, we are located on the occupied lands of the indigenous Ramaytush Ohlone people. In fact, all of us who reside and live in the Bay Area, live and work in the Bay Area, reside on greater Ohlone lands. And to honor both the land and the people who stewarded it for generations, we must acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal of the original inhabitants from this territory. This while we also honor and respect the many indigenous people still connected to this land. Please consider this as part of a reflection on how we all find ourselves in this place at this moment. Now, on to tonight's program. We are especially pleased to be presenting on stage a conversation and cooking demo with renowned restaurateur and activist Reem Assil, hosted by Check Please Bay Area producer Cecilia Phillips. Cecilia will tell you more about Reem in just a moment. Meanwhile, some thanks. First, to our seasoned sponsors, without whom shows like this would not be possible. That's to say the Asian Art Museum, Berkeley Rep, Comcast Business, and Oakland International Airport. Deep gratitude to their commitment to supporting our mission of civic and cultural engagement in the Bay Area. As a special treat tonight, our sponsors at the Asian Art Museum have donated 3 pairs of tickets to randomly selected audience members to visit the museum's new immersive exhibit called Team Lab Continuity, featuring lush imagery drawn from nature and East Asian art that dynamically evolves around you and in response to your movements in the exhibit hall at the Asian Art Museum. Okay, here we go. The lucky winners of tonight's giveaway are Chetan Madaswara, Wendy N.I. Sacido, and Daniel Gelleroff. Congrats, and enjoy the exhibit. Okay, we also want to thank all of you for being among the first members of the public to bring this space to life. You can learn more about upcoming events and purchase tickets at kqed.org/live. And lastly, a safety note, as I referred to earlier, those of us seated in the audience tonight, let's be sure to take care of each other and remain fully masked throughout the evening. Okay, now, it's my great pleasure to bring to the stage our host, my colleague, Cecilia Phillips. I got to tell you a little bit more about her. Here she comes. As mentioned, she is a broadcast video producer for Check Please and a digital video producer for KQED Food. She has long been a part of the Bay Area food scene, working under celebrity chefs, hosting cocktail competitions to raise money for charity, and serving as a San Francisco culinary tour guide. You can watch her on Channel 9 every week, hunting down off-the-grid, extra delicious dining experiences, and her signature segment on this season's Check Please spinoff, You Gotta Try This. Welcome, Cecilia Phillips.
Thank you.
Knock him out.
Thank you so much, David. And a big thanks to all of you for coming. Welcome to this event. I don't know how many of you know this, but this is only our second KQED food event, so we're really excited to have you all here. And in my humble opinion, these are some of the most fun and exciting events that KQED Live does. We have a jam-packed evening with lots of different things. We are going to have a conversation with Reem Assil, and we're going to talk about many different aspects of her life and what brought her here today, including her grandparents' migration story from Palestine and food sovereignty, and the importance of bread in Arab culture. We're going to have an interactive tasting. I see all of you have some boxes in front of you that you've been given. Okay, that little tidbit is going to be saved until later. So as David mentioned, once we do the interactive portion, you'll be able to take off your masks, and then from there do the tasting, and then if you wouldn't mind replacing your masks at the end, that would be great. After the tasting, we're going to discuss in detail many of the recipes that go behind making these 3 different bites that you're going to have. And we're going to do a demonstration to show how all of the recipes come together. As a little bonus this evening, you'll receive a post-show email where you'll be given the recipes so that you can actually make what you see at home, which I know a lot of you have probably done a lot of cooking in the pandemic life that we've all been living in for a while, so can test those recipes out. It's my great pleasure to introduce Reem Assil. Reem is a community leader and labor organizer and brings warmth of community to all of her events. She has worked with the Bay Area's esteemed cooperative bakery, Arizmendi Bakery and Pizzeria, Grace Street Catering. She's also a graduate of the competitive food business incubator program, La Cocina, and a business accelerator program, the ICA, Fund Good Jobs. She was also San Francisco Chronicle's 2017 Rising Star Chef, a 2018 and 2019 James Beard Semi-Finalist for Best Chef West, and San Francisco Magazine's 2018 Chef of the Year and Star Chef's Rising Star Restaurateur in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Reem Assil.
I always get sheepish when you list off the accolades. I'm like, you can stop there.
There are so many more than that we'd be here for a while, but I like how humble you are. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get back into live events. It's just like...
Right? Yeah. I was actually going to ask everybody if they wouldn't mind really quickly giving me their biggest smize. Do you guys know what that is? When you smile with your eyes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of that?
Smize.
Yeah. Is everyone going to smize really quickly? Now we know they're enjoying.
Okay,
yeah.
good,
Okay.
good.
So that's what it's going to look like.
Get the jitters out.
Yeah. Yeah. Our second live event. We're really excited to have you. There's so much to talk about the work that you do. You are so much more than just a restaurant owner, which a lot of people may see on the surface. But your story didn't begin there. You started the groundwork doing so much more, and it mainly began with activism. I was wondering if we could start there and just begin with where your love for doing this sort of work in the community started out.
Yeah. I always sort of joke that the seed for social justice was sort of nascent in me just by nature of being a child of immigrants, being Palestinian for sure. That sort of affinity for like, something's not right, I need to do something about it. Like, it was always sort of there. Like, I come from a long line of generations before me that had, like, you know, really fought for me to have a better life, including my parents. And I think the first time that I really connected what social justice or why it was so important to me was actually as a teenager. You know, we read about the civil rights movement. Like, I grew up in New England, so we were like visiting Plymouth Rock and like celebrating the Pilgrims. But then like my uncle was like going to protest Plymouth Rock in the same weekend. So like starting to question what the books were telling me, and we took a trip to the Deep South for my history class to learn about the real civil rights movement and meeting folks in like deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and learning about how they put their bodies on the line. it reminded me of the stories of my parents. And that's when I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I came back and I was like, I'm going to be a diplomat and I'm going to like figure out peace in the Middle East and all these things. I wanted to be the president and, and that, your bubble is really burst when the reality is of,
life.
Life. And so, I think, went through some hard times in my life, but it brought me here to California. And it was here where I saw people take to the streets when the US invaded Iraq, and I got into anti-war activism. And that was the first time that I felt agency, not just my own agency, but being in community. And that was something that I was really yearning for growing up. And so the kind of one thing led to the other, and I learned that you can get paid to actually organize. It's wow, I get paid to knock on doors, go in homes, drink some tea, ask them about their life. And that was really amazing work. But it was also sort of coming to California was also learning about food. And
well, let's talk about that. Let's jump into that. So basically, throughout your life and career, there's a bunch of different points that come together to make you, the intersectionality of who you are. So a restaurant owner, a mother, activist, and your roots lie in your heritage and where your grandparents came from. I would love to talk about your story and how they came to this country, and then being Palestinian-Syrian, your mother's Palestinian, your father's Syrian, and what that experience was like to watch them. It's a tough question.
It's loaded. I mean, so on my mother's side, my grandmother, and a lot stems from my grandmother. I mean, we come from a family of matriarchs, and I think that so much sort of influences how I move in the world, whether I know it or not. I always kind of reflect on that. But my grandmother, she was born in the city of Jaffa in Palestine in the early 1946, I believe, or 1940 actually. And when she was the age of 8, what we Palestinians call the Nakba, the sort of takeover of Palestine, happened. And she was part of my grandmother's family owned a lot of citrus groves and were sort of kicked off that land. Her uncle really wanted to stay, and so they were one of the few that tried to stay for longer, but ended up sort of being relocated to Gaza. And then my grandfather came from a prominent family in Gaza, and that's where they met. Actually, my grandparents' story is like a love story. They fell in love and they got married. And then in 1967, there was the takeover of West Bank and Gaza, and then they were again forcibly displaced. They thought they were taking a vacation to Beirut, just to lay low, and they never really returned. So my mom grew up in Beirut from the age of 8 onwards, and so being in Beirut was interesting as a Palestinian because Palestinian refugees were treated really badly in all the places that they dwelled. And you can kind of show comparisons now with the Syrian refugee crisis, and that history continues to repeat itself. But for a long time, I mean, they grew up in the Civil War, where being Palestinian was a threat. And so they survived that until they no longer could survive that. And in the early 80s, again, on my dad's side, he came from Syria, and Syria was also having its uprising against dictatorship. And my dad was part of the Egyptian revolution, and all these things, and then that fell apart. And so here are two people who are trying to escape war and could never really do it, but they met each other in Lebanon and decided, we're done, we're going to come to the US. And my grandparents relocated to California, to Northridge, only to come to the early 90 big earthquake. I just feel like disaster follows them everywhere. But that builds their resilience. And home was Northridge for a very long time until both of them recently passed away. And my mom bought their house, and that was the house. The house in California was the place where all of us, no matter where we lived in the world, came and reconnected with one another. So my grandmother is very much a matriarch, and no matter what disaster, she found a way to sort of adapt to the place she was in. And I didn't really know that I was like my grandmother until she passed. I started to reflect, why am I even cooking? Like, my mom was a working mom. I was a latchkey kid growing up. In fact, I thought the kitchen was a very oppressive place. And so for a lot of my life, I was trying to escape it.
Oppressive in the sense that...
Yeah, well, cooking is a very liberatory thing, but when you're forced to cook or expected to cook, it could actually be quite oppressive.
Yes.
And so what I loved about my grandmother is that she had a role to play in the family, and she took that role very seriously. If you went into my grandmother's kitchen, it was as if she's running a restaurant, or she was preparing for a disaster, who knows, But to feed people was her purpose, and I feel like I'm living out that purpose. My grandmother sort of lives within me in the work that I do. You don't just feeding people as a mechanism of survival, but also as a mechanism of building resilience for what is to come. So I feel like that's the way I move in the world. I didn't know that my grandmother was so ingrained, and just because I think, and this is a lot of people in diaspora, we've been robbed of those stories. It wasn't until I wrote my cookbook where I actually learned my grandmother's story and everything that she had to go through to come here and to keep the foods of our people alive in our history, right?
You actually talk a lot about erasure, right?
Yeah.
So what it means food is so interconnected to survival at the very most basic level, right? But then the other layers are taking someone's cultural foods that they eat and then erasing those, and that is happening. And this is almost like retaining the history of who you are by making these recipes, right?
Yeah, food is a documentation of a culture, of a people. And food is very much connected to land. I think people forget, in many cultures, we were forced into urban settings. Palestinians are rural people. We live off the land. And so not being able to connect to the land means that we can't cook our food, which means we can't continue the stories behind that food. And then you have on top of that sort of the reclamation of our food, either the invisibilization of it, the de-ethnicization of it, rupturing it from its story, or the rebranding of it as Israeli or Mediterranean, or, these sort of euphemisms that kind of make it really vague. It takes Palestinians out of the story. And so our very right to exist, because we don't have a land, we don't have rights, our food is kind of the last frontier of us being able to tell our stories. So
you said something to me earlier before we started about how when people refer to hummus being, hummus, it just must be from Palestine, and a very visceral reaction that you had. If you could talk about how that kind of made you feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I don't really believe, it's all contextual, right? The food, the beautiful thing about food is that nobody can claim exclusive ownership over anything, but then when you negate people that have subsisted off of that food for so long, that's where it hurts, because you're I don't exist as a person. And so hummus is a very iconic example of that. I mean, you think of hummus, you either think of the Israeli food trend or Trader Joe's. You do not think of Palestinians, even though we've been subsisting off of that food for generations, right? So it's the either intentional or non-intentional sort of removing us from that story. That is very hard. Food tells a story of colonization. It tells a story of genocide. You think about sort of the, any country, not being able to tell that story means that we forget about that history. Part of my work is really to bring that history to the forefront, not to shy away from that. Like, there are some really beautiful things about how cultures merge and food kind of gets created, but you have to tell those stories.
Yeah.
That is the important thing.
That's what connects everyone and brings everyone together,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Along those lines, food sovereignty, let's talk about that a little bit. We talked about kind of shifting the idea for people to, I think a lot of chefs, restaurant owners, they'll tend to focus in on a lot about food sustainability, which is a huge part of the conversation, right? But the extra layer on top of that is food sovereignty. So the right of people to healthy and culturally appropriate food that's produced ecologically sound and sustainably, right? So putting those all together, how can all of us start to really begin to think about food sovereignty and the idea that all people have a right to food and culturally appropriate food as well?
Yeah, I just, a lot of people sort of use the word food justice and food sovereignty interchangeably. And I like to make one distinction, which is that food sovereignty is all of those things, and a people's self-determination depends on that. So I think about it in terms of ownership, ownership over my narrative, around my means of production, around my land, around my right to be connected to my roots. That's what makes us human, right? And when we get stripped of that, we cannot function as a truly humane society. So our self-determination actually depends on all of those things. So that's kind of like the distinction that I made. Like, we all deserve healthy food, but we all deserve to be connected to our roots, to ourselves. And so food is integral to that, right? So I always like to take the sort of issue of food sovereignty beyond just the food itself, but everything that surrounds that food. So ownership of land, ownership of narrative, ownership over our means of production. And that's the work that I do. I never really wanted to start Reem's just to have a restaurant and make food. It was everything else around that food that I wanted to do. I wanted to create another world in which people feel free to be their truest selves, and do not feel stripped of their humanity, of their dignity, of their connection to people, right? So that's really sort of what's at the center.
All ties it together, right?
Yeah.
You very obviously weave all of this into your organizations, right? You have murals on your walls at the restaurant, at Reem's at Fruitvale.
And in the mission.
And in the mission as well. You've put really important people on those walls, and there's been it's kind of reached some backlash.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what it's like to really want to elevate certain people and then having not everyone maybe understand the reason why?
Yeah. Well, when I started Reem's, I made a very conscious decision. I remember the first time I was like, I'm going to call this Arab food. Because, up until Reem's came about on the scene, I mean, our food is branded by my people, which I understood, right? Because they didn't have the privilege that I had. Mediterranean. I mean, some people were saying their food was Greek because they were scared of the backlash. There's a reality that we live in a country that is still very seeped in anti-Arab xenophobia, and that's because of our country's foreign policy. It's because of the legacy of white supremacy that, anti-Arab, the root of anti-Arab racism is the same root as, the white supremacy that created slavery and, the erasure of indigenous people off this land. It's the same root, right? So just making that, I knew that I had to, if I'm going to go all the way. That I couldn't just bring half and try to figure out a way to make it palatable to Americans, that they'd have to take me all and not just some parts of me. And part of that was my Palestinian identity. And for so long in my life, I'd hid those parts of myself because I was scared, right? The second week of college was September 11th. That forever changed my life, being an Arab in this country. So yeah, it was a risk. I remember my parents were like, why don't you just blend in? You can say Arab here and there. And I was like, no, because I can't be fully successful if I'm not my truest self. And so, I think the world has changed, and those murals were really beautiful depictions of intersections. I depicted Palestinian freedom fighters, activists who, had a piece of a pin of Oscar Grant, the young black man who was killed, in the platform right above my bakery. I wanted to show the intersection of struggle between black and brown communities. I see myself as interconnected as an Arab in this country. And that gained actually more community than it gained backlash. I thought, if I'm being written about in Breitbart, then maybe I'm doing something right.
Exactly.
I think that I chose to double down when everybody was telling me, maybe just tone it down a little bit. But I think the world is not, in a very different place. People are hungry to understand a different way. And I think about, who are the first people to put Nelson Mandela on their walls, or Malcolm X, or any of these people we celebrate today. So Reem's was never gonna just be a restaurant. It's a marker of where we're at in our history in this country, and I feel proud.
I mean, you should feel proud, and more than that, I mean, I remember my first experience actually going to your restaurants, and that was kind of the big highlight, right? Like the first chance for people to try Arab food, and how much courage it takes to actually brand yourself as such and say, this is what I have, this is what I do, and opening up a world to myself where I was like, oh, this is so amazing. Like I'm getting to try these amazing dishes and learn about somebody else and expand my worldview. So,
and how familiar did it feel too? I mean, that was part of the thing for me, is like, every culture has a version of hospitality. I mean, bread is transcendent of cultures. And so I wanted to create something also that felt familiar to folks, felt accessible. I know I have that privilege of being the conduit, living in this country. And so, it felt very important for me.
Let's talk a little bit about what life has been like for you as of late. So being a restaurateur in a pandemic being a restaurateur in general is a very difficult.
Got a little break, actually.
You were full steam ahead during the pandemic, right? So you had Reem's in Fruitvale, and you were moving to open a new restaurant.
I had a baby in between that.
Baby, okay. In between, no big deal. So you have all of these things going on, and then you open March 2020. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. March 16th, to be exact.
So we're talking days after, the governor essentially kind of mandated that everything just get shut down. Yep. You were featured in the New Yorker in a very poignant, very real, very raw side of who you are. I've in preparation for this, I watched lots of videos about you, and there's a lot on the internet about this woman, so check it out. But I see you in different realms, and you're very positive, and your energy and like laughter and brightness for life is seen, but the video for the New Yorker was a stark difference. Yeah. Can you tell everybody what the video was about? And
it started with, I was like down to the, like restaurateurs, the food industry was on the brink of something even before the pandemic. I think the pandemic just showed how fragile it was. By that time I had just left a partnership for a pretty prominent restaurant. My child was almost about to be 2. We were struggling in Oakland, and I was about to open this other restaurant because that's what you're told. You need to just keep going, keep scaling. And you're on this sort of gerbil wheel. And even as a small business owner, like you're kind of invisibilized in all of that. Everybody is struggling, right? But the burden falls on you. And I am very... probably to my detriment, where I take on the woes of like the whole world. But, yeah, I threw out a Hail Mary to my community for a lot of my employees who, you know, did not have the privilege to get unemployment from the government. It was a matter of like whether they would be able to pay their rents. And so I put out this GoFundMe, and June Stinson, who produced this really beautiful video, reached out to me, and she's like, can I follow you? And I did these vlogs, and they were very cathartic. You know, I think in grief, there's clarity, right, of what really matters to you. I'm sure everybody in this room had a version of that in the last 18 months. And I remember I was like, all of these accolades, all of that stuff, none of that really matters, right? Like what matters to me was that I'm feeding people, I'm creating jobs, I'm building community. It doesn't matter how I do that. And so that was like a huge epiphany for me, and I was able to really kind of like shake out of it. And the other thing was that my employees, to my like, you know, it was kind of scary when your employees are asking what is to become of Reem's. And I didn't have the answers. They asked, you know, and I was like, let's figure it out together. Why does one person have to have the sole sort of burden of figuring this out? And
in that, you came up with some solutions.
Yeah, we came up with some solutions. I said, I don't know the final answer, but I want you all to be a part of that journey. We're going to become a commissary kitchen in Oakland. We are going to feed those who most need it. We're going to double down on this. We're going to go hard. Everybody is going to keep their job. I want to be worker owned. I want you all to have a stake, because if we're going to change the restaurant industry, workers have to have a stake in that, and they have to be the people making the solutions, and they're not going to be motivated if there's nothing at the end of the tunnel for them, right? We see, I mean, unemployment was a problem in the food industry before, like being able to find workers, because people don't want to come back to substandard jobs.
Yeah.
And so they became my partners in figuring it out. And, you know, we built an apprenticeship program called Sumud, which in Arabic means resilience. It's the thing that we use to describe Palestinian steadfastness in our, you know, in the struggle to survive. And we're learning together how to be business owners. We're learning about democratic governance, how we make decisions. And my employees are empowered and are like more motivated than ever in the work. So that was a huge shift for us. And I think it will dictate sort of the next 10 years of Reem's.
I think that kind of encompasses who you are as a person.
I was really tired too. Like, I cannot do all of this.
Yeah.
And it took a lot to be vulnerable to say, like, as the leader, I actually don't know all of these things. Like, I need support. So yeah.
Yeah, you. The thing that showed me that really is who you are as a person at your very core, the idea of taking all of these people who come together to work for you in a restaurant, right? But instead, pushing back on that idea was an article that you wrote that came out in Eater, and I believe, if I'm getting the title right, was "Don't Call Me Chef."
Yeah.
Which I love, because myself being a restaurant person and really growing up in the restaurant industry, I think it's almost a sign of how much esteem that an organization has. The more you refer to the people who are working there, you know, in the kitchens, the more you are just drilled into saying, yes, chef, you know? Mm-hmm. And in reality, what that continues to push forward is this idea of power, mm-hmm. you know, over.
Power over, yes.
So talk about why that was a huge, you know, that's a huge thing for somebody who is truly an esteemed cook and chef, mm-hmm. to say, don't call me chef. Yeah. What did it mean to have to kind of make that proclamation?
Really what I meant by that article, I mean, don't call me chef was kind of a euphemism of like, let's not continue this status quo. Let's not talk about we want to go back to normal, you know? Like, normal was not freaking normal. In fact, it was the exact opposite. It was like the Twilight Zone.
It was like, normal for certain people.
For certain people, yes. And so, yeah, that really was a symbolic for like, I do not want to continue status quo, and anything that is a remnant of that status quo doesn't feel right. Because we can, the point in that article was that it's a system. You know, it's not just a few bad apples, right? The whole thing is rooted in bad practice. And so, you know, while we've reclaimed the word chef, and there are great chefs out there, I don't mind calling people chef. It's not, you know, that sort of aspiring to a title creates these dynamics even amongst the best of us. Even amongst, you know, just putting a person of color at the helm or a woman at the helm of something does not actually take care of the power imbalance. And so, you know, that was what I was questioning, and questioning the contradiction of me being in that, and what am I doing to feed that? And, you know, it's an ongoing struggle for me. I feel like I have a platform. I want to bring people along with me in that platform. And yet I'm surrounded by media that wants to have a certain story, that wants to create a certain narrative, and that takes my power away too, right? Like I'm stuck in that cog. And so I think the more we sort of question that and push back against that in the things that we do, the more we can be creative about thinking what's possible. Like even my employees were like, couldn't get their brains around, wait, I can make this decision, you know? I was like, okay, we're not getting tipped anymore. How much do you want to get paid?
Yeah.
Talk amongst yourselves. And they were like, we're taught not to have ownership over those decisions. So, you know, the more we can kind of get into the practice of questioning status quo, I think, hopefully, we can think of some alternatives. You know, we're trying. We don't have all the answers, but I think
You're asking the right question.
we're asking the right questions.
Yes, absolutely. Do you hear that? Do you hear something? I think I hear some stomachs grumbling.
I
They
think
might
so,
be
yeah.
ready to try some food and stuff.
And smell some
Deliciousness.
bread.
Some
Yeah.
bread, yeah. So we'll talk about bread in a second. We have something so exciting right now. So not only are you going to get a chance to try some bites that are actual recipes that you've crafted over the years, but to sweeten the deal, we actually have swag for you all, so you can win prizes. Oh, and over in the wings,
Look at this model here.
Our prize model, Executive Director of Live Events, Ryan. Please, you have the swag this evening. So we're going to play a little game. So as a reminder, you have your masks on now. I think that they should probably take them off to eat. You would think
Sure,
that would
yeah.
probably be a good idea. Okay, so we have 3 little bites, and we're going to have you open the boxes. So to play the game, we have given you the ingredients so you all know like what's inside in case any of you have any allergies, but to also make this game a little bit easier. But we're also going to have you all think a little bit like a chef, right? So I'll tell you which one to start with, and we're going to identify them by shapes. And what I'm really looking for is for you all to be able to describe what flavors you're getting. Now, in each one of these, there's a specific ingredient that really shines. It makes the dish what it is and what it tastes like. But I want to hear what you all have to say about what comes forward, and then we'll have Reem tell us if you've gotten it right, and then we'll give you prizes. Yeah? Sound fun? Okay. All right, so we'll start with the first
Disclaimer, I'm like the worst at these judges because I'm like, everybody's right. It's all about perspective, but I'm going to try.
We don't have prizes for everybody, I'm sorry. But everyone is a winner, and that's the most important thing to come away with. So let's see, which shape should we start with? I think let's start with, let's do the one that you can see the filling for the inside. Should we start there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the one that you can see that's a little bit more
There's a few.
square.
Yeah.
And everyone just go ahead and dig in and try that one. And while you all are eating, I'll have you describe the name of the dish, the pastry, and then maybe talk a little bit about it. But don't give away too much of the secrets.
I won't give away too much.
So what's the first one that they're trying?
So the first one you're trying is called sfiha. Sfiha is kind of an interesting. I was telling Celia that like they're the same pastry in the Arab world. The name can be like 20 different things, and the same pastry can have 20 different names. So this is one of those pastries, but this is really modeled off of a Lebanese version that I love, because I like associate this pastry with my grandmother, but going to Lebanon and seeing these like big burly men make these little meat pies, I could say meat pies, it's not vegetarian, I'll give that away, like en masse, like really, really fast. It was like magical. I was like, wow.
All right, so does anyone want to take a guess as to what the most overarching flavor that you're getting with one of the ingredients that's standing out? That's pretty tough, but anybody want to take a, yeah, okay. We have, yes, pomegranate.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what the pomegranate flavor might be, like how it might have come together, prepared in the dish?
The acidic of the pomegranate juice and also the seed, give you the texture.
All right.
Yes.
Should we?
I think she got it.
Yes, yes.
Yes, pomegranate. Pomegranates are really abundant in the Arab world. We use them, and so I love this time of year. We basically put like pomegranates as garnish on pretty much like more than 50% of my dishes. So yeah, we use a lot of those sort of tart, acidic, but also sweet flavors, especially in meat dishes.
So it's been made into a molasses, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we reduce it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next dish.
All right. Where are we going? Are we doing triangular or boat?
Yeah.
Or triangle? Triangle. Let's go to the triangle. Oopsie.
Excuse me. Who wants to take a guess?
You're getting a sour, yeah. It's sometimes confused for lemon, but there's actually yeah. I heard some.
Sumac.
That
was it.
Yes.
Let's give her a hand.
Yes. I don't know where that came from. I just heard a shout out of sumac. There we go. Do we want to ask what sumac is?
Yes.
As a bonus? You have enough swag for that? Okay. Okay, 3 more.
Let's talk
Who
about
wants
sumac.
to say what sumac is?
Oh, somebody.
It's a spice, right? It's spicy. It's sweet. It's a lot. I love it. I put it on everything.
Yes.
So it's.
I heard a dried berry. Yes, yeah. So sumac has this like, if folks can see it, it's just like this beautiful, vibrant red color, sometimes purple, depending on how dried out the berry is. But yeah, it's a berry that grows really prominently. There is sumac here in the U.S., right? And there's, I think, there's some poisonous varietals, so not to be confused with that. Yeah, but this grows in a lot of different parts of the Arab world, really the greater Southwest Asia, North African region. So it's very prominent also in Iranian culture and Afghani culture. Yeah, it's really good with the spinach because you can get that sour note without putting too much liquid into your spinach pie.
Awesome. So let's talk about the third final one. This one you said was unique because of the way that the shape is folded. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but everyone wants to give that last one a taste. So this is the boat-shaped one. Yeah, okay.
I'm glad you think it's a boat. That's good. Some people don't, yeah.
What do they?
I won't say, but you can use your imagination. I'll keep it PG-13 here.
All right, anyone want to take a guess as to what the like prominent flavor profile is that should be coming forward and like what ingredient is coming out?
It's Friday night, you know, gotta keep it light and fun.
Nigella seeds.
The
Yeah.
jealousy.
Okay, bonus. What is it? Do you know what it is?
I cook with this, and it's a little. It's like a little seed. I don't know. Yeah.
Give it. Yes.
Like
You
a
get the
little
prize. Let's talk
What is
about
it? What does it smell like?
like a sense of like what the nigella seed is, or like
Where does it come from? Could you tell by smelling it?
or maybe comparing it to an herb that you're familiar with? Anybody?
Like an onion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nigella seed comes from this really beautiful flower. I think it's like this vibrant blue color.
Yes. Awesome.
So it has this sort of very savory smell to it.
Yeah.
Like the everything bagel.
Awesome. Great job. Okay. We all got some prizes and some swag. So they're going to keep enjoying these bites, and we're going to demonstrate how to make them.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys
Awesome.
want to see?
All right. Let's do
Wait,
it.
who's really gonna go home and try to bake these? I want to get like a okay, cool.
Got some chefs in the house. All right. Let's
I mean,
head
as
over.
an alternative, shameless plug. We do cater at Reem's and serve these at Reem's, so come visit us.
All right. So let's head over. I think you have an apron for
Yeah,
me,
I
right?
do.
Okay.
You're gonna be joining me in our kitchen here. Some aprons.
So this is our second food event, but this is our first food demonstration.
Ah.
Yay, so that's really exciting. Oh, thank you. Gonna grab an apron. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about bread. You based your restaurant model as a bakery. Let's talk about the importance of why you did that. There are some restaurants that don't even have bread programs.
I know.
Let alone bread that they make in-house.
Yeah.
So why was that important for you to keep that focus?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I just wanted to be a bread bakery, and then everybody's like, but what about the falafel? But what about this? But what about the... I was like, I'm never doing that. And then I was like, I have to give the people what they want. So we kind of became a restaurant, as an addition.
Right.
Like the bakery was really the heart. In the Arab world, the bakery is like as important as like, even in the most remote villages, there's like a bakery and a post office. Like that's how important.
Have to make
it
sure
is.
you have those two.
Yeah,
Okay.
our people subsist off of bread. It's like we think about even in like times of war, the bakeries were the first thing that get hit, right? Bread is kind of the lifeline of my people. Like the more I sort of studied bread and seeing the roots of it in Egypt and just like the nerdiness of how like fermentation happens, like the alchemy of it, I was like, this is like kind of symbolic to life. And so, yeah, I think the other part of not just the bread, but the feeling of the bakery. Who's walked into a bakery? Do you know that feeling when you walk into the bakery? What do you feel? Warmth. Yeah. Feel the I feel the
she
warmth
has it
on
on
my
her
back,
shirt.
yeah, on my shirt. Yeah, that sort of warm feeling, that nostalgia, that feeling of community. That was really apparent to me at a time where I was really just wanted community. And you wouldn't, like in Lebanon and Syria and the bakeries that I visited, you would never guess that there was any political turmoil going on outside those doors, because in the bakery, it was just like everybody was so connected and happy. And
They're there to feed
I wanted to be a
people.
baker. I wanted to be a baker, one, because I like magic, so I love the alchemy of it. But two, I wanted to be like an extended part of a family. Like the baker knew everything about everyone.
The gossip.
I wanted the chisme, basically. Yeah.
Excuse me. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. So let's start.
Yes, and then also just the act of kneading dough. Like, so when I decided in 2010, I'm going to start Reem's. Like I had sort of an idea of what Reem's was going to be. I came back, I went to culinary school, but it was really the first job at Arizmendi where you're actually just working with dough. It's so healing. I don't know, like just sort of being in your body. So that's the first thing I thought we could do.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
What do we have?
the base dough for this is so simple. It's basically flour, water, yeast, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and some olive oil. So you're going to start with yeast and warm water, which I've bloomed. Bloomed is just sort of the fancy way of activating your yeast, making sure it's alive. So when it gets sort of bubbly and fuzzy, I don't know, you can't see the camera there, but
There we go.
look at that, so fancy. I'm going to start with 3 cups of flour, and I'm going to mix.
And this is just all-purpose flour.
Yep, all-purpose flour. If you have bread flour, you could do a mix. And some sugar. And the sugar is just sort of to feed the yeast, get its appetite going. Yeast feeds off of sugar. And some salt. The salt kind of does the opposite. It's like, okay, slow down. In fact, people don't realize that like salt is actually like, if you forget the salt, not only will it not taste good, your dough can just keep growing and growing
Rising.
and growing. Yeah,
Oh,
keep
wow,
rising.
okay.
Like, I always joke like on like the night before Christmas Eve, which is the busiest day in our bakery, somebody forgot to put the salt in all of our base dough recipes.
Oh,
And
they're
like
having
we
the right
showed up to
reaction.
the walk-in, and like the dough was literally busting out of the walk-in. It was bad. Yeah.
All right.
And then I'm gonna create a well inside my dry ingredients, and
That just makes it a little bit
throw
easier
my
to
bubbly yeasty water.
mix together, right?
Yep.
Create that little well.
Yeah. Throw my oil in there. That's gonna give it that like nice mouth feel, and the richness of the olive oil also imparts some flavor.
But
And I'm just getting my hands dirty. I mean, some people use a spoon, but
You want to feel it.
You wanna
'cause then
feel
you
it,
can
yep,
tell
yep.
how it is and where it's coming along.
right.
Olive oil is really important to the cuisine as well that you
Yes.
cook with. Can you talk about that while we're eating?
Yeah. So, I mean, it takes 40 years to get like a mature olive tree that is time and time again producing the olives.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like that important to Palestinian culture. You know, we use olive oil is basically an actual ingredient. Like, it's not just a garnish. We put like sops and sops of olive oil on all of our dips. And it's really sad because in Palestine, in the West Bank in particular, you know, the Israeli government is raising a lot of lands with olive trees on it. Sorry, I got some flour on your black. So, you know, when you hang out. So
In
I'm
the
just kind of pinching this until it all comes together and kind of shaggy. And then I like to knead on a surface.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can I have some too?
Yeah, you want to knead with me?
Yes.
There you go.
I want to know what
Yeah.
it means to know when the dough's right too. How
Yeah.
do you know? Is
You
there
feel it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of doing a pinchy method until it all kind of comes together. And then you can do kind of like a push, pull, turn, push, pull, turn.
Push.
Pull over,
Pull.
fold it over,
Okay.
and then rotate.
Turn. Okay.
Push, pull, turn.
Pull. Turn.
There you go.
Got it. So then.
And keep rotating. And so this is kind of the funny thing, like you're creating the skeleton of this bread. You're creating the gluten. People forget that gluten is actually what gets created when water and flour hit together, right? There are different protein molecules, and the yeast is just really sort of breaking when the water and the flour, they like recompose into what we call gluten strands, which keeps the dough nice and strong, have structure.
And it gives.
How's your dough feeling? It's getting a little softer.
Yep.
Yeah. This fatayr is kind of like a pasta dough. So it has kind of a little bit stiffer.
Okay.
But when it rises, it's going to get nice and soft. And we have TV time dough. that
Yes.
We're going to switch to. Yeah. So the two things that I look for in a dough to see if it are the three things really, the three tests are like the texture, the smoothness. They say smooth like a baby's butt. But babies' butts are not smooth. Having had a child, I know this. Elasticity, like if you push on it and it starts to spring back, then you know there's like gluten because it's sort of like a rubber band. And what we call strength, which is the window pane test, when you pull it apart and it becomes translucent and it doesn't break.
Be able to see through it.
You should be able to see through it, exactly. So we'll keep kneading. Yeah, I mean, and then in Gaza, it's interesting, like olive oil, like our iconic dish, musakhan, which is the base of one of our best sellers at Reem. See all these shameless plugs, sorry. Called the Pali Cali, but it's really amazing. It's like this chicken that is just like brine in that berry in the sumac, but olive oil is basically the other ingredient. It's like confit in the olive oil. And we cook musakhan to really celebrate the olive harvest. But in Gaza, you can't get olive oil anywhere. So they cook it in canola oil and like ration from like, yeah.
They still make it
Yeah,
happen.
I mean, people are food insecure. And so just the simple act of getting ingredients to make musakhan is like a political act for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
Olive oil is that important. Mine is starting to get smooth. How's yours? Getting there? Getting there?
I'm really impressed with you in being a baker. I do not bake, I cook, but I do not have the patience for bread, to be quite honest. So I'm excited to learn about this. So I think it does take a bit of patience and love. So
Yeah, they're getting there. Okay. Here. Takes a little bit of forearm strength too.
yes.
There we go.
All right. Perfect. So then let's see.
So
So
we're
after
gonna
you
put
do
this.
this,
So
what
after
do
you do this, you're gonna put it in your bowl, cover it, wait for it to grow.
Okay. Rest,
An hour and a half,
rise.
2 hours, and rest. Yep. And then you get these.
Magic.
Magic. All right.
All right.
So this is dough that has been made, portioned, rounded.
Okay.
Shout out to my team at Reams. Shout out to Hi in the back.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi. All right. So
All right.
now they've rested. About how
They've
long?
rested.
does that usually rest?
So after they rise and you cut it, you can let them rest for like 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab some flour for us to dust.
Okay.
All right. So every culture has a dumpling. This is kind of like making dumplings. So you're going to take one, kind of dip it in the flour, do a little pinchy.
I love these technical terms.
Yeah, little pinchy.
Pinchy. Okay. So
Maybe sprinkle a little bit more. And you can use your hands to push them out, or you can use a dowel. You're
oh
just
my
sort of
gosh. This
rolling
is the
back
most
and forth.
amazing feeling dough I've ever. I know I'm doing it wrong now. When I'm doing it at home, it does not feel like this. This is so light and airy. This is
Yeah.
amazing. Okay.
Thanks
so
to mechanized Hobart machines that make your dough flawlessly.
that helps. All right.
That definitely helps.
Okay. So what shape are
Yeah.
we gonna make?
What would you like to make?
I would like to make the boat.
You want to make the boat? I love it. I love
Start
it.
with the
Let's
boat.
make the boat.
Okay.
All right. So you're going to, so this is our cheese and Nigella.
Okay.
There's some spoons in here.
Great. Let's talk about the cheese. So it's
Yes.
a couple of different one kind of cheese, two different kinds of cheese.
It's one cheese
Okay,
in
one cheese,
here.
that's
It's called akawi. And
It's a Middle
so you're
Eastern
going to scoop
cheese.
like a good heaping, maybe 2 of those.
Two of these in here. Okay.
Yeah,
All
get a
right.
nice. So akawi cheese is a soft brine cow's cheese. It basically gets transported in salted water, so it's like super salty. It has almost like a Oaxacan, like real Oaxacan cheese, not like the Oaxacan cheese you get in the corner store. Like super moist, has like a little bit of spongy, but it also has a little pull to it.
Yeah,
So
a little bit
it's like
crumbly.
a cross between like a mozzarella.
Yep.
Yeah, we use it in a lot of our dishes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay.
So to shape this, that's how I wash my hands.
With flour?
Yeah, if I have sticky on them. If you ever have a water shortage, which we do. So I'm going to start on one side of the circle.
Okay.
I'm going to hold it up.
All right. I'm already lost.
Oh,
Okay. So I made mine.
it's
into
almost like you're going to make a cannoli or like
Oh, okay.
a little
All right.
bouquet.
There we go. Okay. Pinch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a bouquet of cheese.
Best kind of bouquet.
The best of yes, exactly.
Right.
And then we're going to take the other side and we're going to kind of do the same thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so you're holding on one side and then you're just kind of pinching down to seal it. And then you're going to lift it up, give it a nice stretch so that your cheese kind of distributes. There you go. Look at that boat. Got it.
Oh my!
Yes.
Can we
Give
get
her
a,
applause here.
we got
Let me see how. Let's
mine
see.
compared to yours. Look at what you did. You taught
I
me.
mean, I kind of have like an edge here.
No, but look at how good
Yeah.
your teaching skills are.
No,
This is,
yeah,
I
that's
did my
great.
first-
That's good.
Yes.
And then you want to take this brush. And so the fun thing is that, like I said, olive oil is king
Yes.
in our cuisine. So we're going to give it a nice little
Brushing
brush to kind of get the seams all nice and brown and caramelized. And that's it.
Awesome.
That's our boats. Shall we put them here?
Yes. Okay, and then we should do. Let's
do the triangle.
Okay, we'll do the
That's
triangle.
always a fun one.
All right, great.
All right.
And do any of these have like the shapes? Do they have significance too? Did we talk about like
You know, yeah, I mean,
you said-
obviously the shape denotes what kind, especially the ones that are closed and you can't tell.
Okay.
But like the spinach pie is pretty like universal that you know there's spinach in it. But I've seen some bakeries switch it up and put cheese, and it's like the most confusing thing when I bite in. I'm like, that's not spinach. But it's pretty universal, like the spinach one, I would say.
Is always a triangle shape.
But yeah, like you would know if you had your local bakery that you were going to, you'd know which things are in which shape.
Okay.
Like it's just kind of known. The sfiha, the square, also is another one.
Awesome.
And then there's all sorts of, I mean, they do stars, they do little florets, like, yeah.
Okay. All right,
We'll
do
do
a
that at the
triangle.
201.
Okay.
All right, so spinach.
All right, so just
So we're going
get
to
a
do the
little
same
dollop
thing.
in
So
here.
the trick of the spinach, spinach has a lot of water content, and it tends to release the water when the spinach pie is cooking. So you want to kind of get as much of the water content out as you can. So I like drain it before I scoop. Or I
Squeeze
kind
it
of
even,
squeeze
right?
it out, yeah.
Take out the extra
But you know,
water.
honestly, like if your spinach pies pop open in the oven, they're still delicious. Like my mom was always like, I don't care. But I always want the perfect one, so I became obsessed.
Okay. So
The trick that I like to do, if it's not sticking, you can kind of put your hands in a little bit of water to seal it, kind of like dumplings.
okay.
All right, so
All right.
you're kind of going to do the same thing we did with the cheese pie.
Okay.
You're going to make a bouquet, and I think the mistake that people make here is they go all the way up to the top, but you don't want to do that. You want to do a little off sides, because when you pull this, you're going to pull it together. And then you're going to kind of, you don't want the spinach to touch your dough, so you want to stretch before you
Before I pinch.
Yeah.
Okay.
stretch before you pinch.
Okay. And then just
And then you're going to bring them up. And then while you're holding it, kind of pinch down the sides.
okay. And you're kind of just making like a little, almost like a line.
A pyramid, yeah.
Yeah, to pinch the seams
Yep.
together.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
I think you are a really great teacher.
Yeah,
Consider
look at that. Natural.
Thank you, everyone. Look at that.
Same thing. We're going to give these guys a nice little paint.
Okay.
Yeah.
These look
have-
incredibly
yeah.
complicated, and I'm sure that the filling, we'll talk about that in a second, but shaping them's not crazy hard.
And it's
This is
really
not bad.
fun. I mean, the thing about baking or just really cooking, like a lot of Arab cuisine is actually very simple. It's the methodology, like the many, many steps. So you want to do it like invite your friends over or like
Have them
have
help
family
you.
members, and it's a very communal act, right? Like you're never making pies by yourself.
Yes.
Like my mom would make a lot of pies and then she'd freeze them. So at the drop of a dime, if anybody showed up, she'd take the frozen pies out. And
So
just throw
these
them in
ones
the
can be
oven.
frozen and
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Just make them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the filling for
Yeah.
the spinach one that we just did. So what was in there?
Yeah,
besides
so
spinach?
it's spinach, red onion, sumac, a little bit of lemon, olive oil, and then allspice and cinnamon, actually. We do like the sour with the warming, and it's a nice, it gives sort of a nice complex flavor to the spinach.
Okay. And
What do
so-
you guys think about the spinach? Yeah? Yeah. They're addicting. All right,
So this is the last one.
the last one. So this is our sfiha.
Sfiha.
And, you know, they can be as small as these like little bite-sized. And
Oh,
you should
like tiny.
Yeah, you should see them shaping them. It's like amazing.
All right.
All right,
So
same
we'll do a
thing.
little
We're
filling
gonna
here.
do like the filling.
All right.
Sort of 2 heaping scoops of that. Right in the center.
Wow. Smells so good.
Yeah. And so the like secret thing in this, it's not very kosher because there's lamb and yogurt in this, but the yogurt kind of tenderizes the meat. This is a very Baalbek style, which is like a northern Lebanese, and Aleppo, northern Syrian. That's how they make them. And pomegranate molasses and also the warming spices, that goes really well. So we're gonna start at one corner and we're gonna
Hey,
pinch up.
Reem.
Yeah.
Hi, Reem. It's Hi over here at the corner. Do you mind if I move some of the bowls so that our audience can see a little bit
Of
better?
course,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
look
Hi,
at
y'all. I'm Hi
that.
with
See?
Reems.
See?
I just want to make sure.
clutch.
I just want to make sure you all see it better. Is that better?
See it?
Okay, cool, cool,
you.
cool.
Okay, great. I moved one.
great,
Yeah. There we
yes.
go. Thank
There
you.
we go.
Okay, cool,
Okay,
cool.
awesome. All right. So how do we
All
do
right.
this shape here?
All right, so we're going on the corner. You did one
Yep,
pinch?
One pinch.
Okay. Then we're gonna work on this corner and we're gonna do another pinch.
This feels like the most complicated one. So
It really depends. Like some people really struggle. It depends.
I'm gonna make it happen.
Yeah,
I
you're
got
gonna make
this.
it
All right.
happen.
I got
Kind of
two
like
corners.
a diaper.
Okay.
Pull it up.
Okay. And then
And
how do we
then-
do the final?
There you go. Yep.
Okay,
So then you're gonna pinch this. You can either bring them both up and do it together, or you could work one by one.
Okay.
Yeah. And you want to pull it up over the meat. So
That it kind of sits in there
yeah.
like a pocket.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. Yep. Exactly. That's a good method.
Yeah.
She's got it.
Just kind of push it. Oh, thank you. They're being nice. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. This is
Yeah,
where
it's good. You can go.
there's the
You- Yeah, that was my teaching. There's no such thing as bad students, only bad teachers.
Oh, no,
Somebody
no.
told me that.
I just like
My
a lot of
husband told me
filling.
that.
A lot of filling. on mine. She's helping me fix it. This is great.
You're just pulling it up. You just stop pinching.
Well, this will actually be good for everybody. as
Embrace
they're-
the pinching.
Yes, as they're making this at home, just
Yeah.
remember pinch, pinch, pinch,
Pinch, pinch, pinch.
and cover. Then it can
you
be
go.
saved. Okay.
There it is.
And then let me guess. Is this the next?
More
Okay,
oil,
There
yeah.
we go. I figured it out.
There you go.
All right. And then how long do they cook for?
So in your oven for about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, like a nice high heat, like 400 degrees.
Okay.
You guys will get this recipe. This recipe is in my cookbook, but it's even 2.0 because we put some tahini in there. It's, tomatoes. You can do, really, once you have the base of your fillings, you can I encourage people to get creative with it.
Yes.
That's
these look
what food is
great.
all about. Food should never stay stagnant.
Awesome.
So-
Look at these,
Yes.
everyone. Take a look. Woo.
See, you don't know
Did
which
it.
is whose.
They're beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, so that was the cooking demonstration. You just mentioned your book. So you have a book coming out. First cookbook.
First cookbook.
What's the title of it?
It's called Arabiya. Yeah, and in Arabic that means Arab woman. So you can kind of tell what kind of book it is. It's really sort of a reclamation. And really the recipes in there tell a story of my life living in diaspora. So, my food is as much California as it is Palestinian, as much Oakland as it is Boston. It's like all of the culmination of the experiences that I had sort of showing up in dishes. And so, yeah, it was a labor of love to have to write a cookbook in the middle of a pandemic. It was both hard, but also healing. Learning how to go back to being a home cook and to get a chance to talk to my family. I'm really proud that, this is a living, breathing story.
Documentation.
Documentation of my
that,
family
yeah.
history. So.
Awesome. So the
Yeah.
book comes out in April?
April. Yeah, you
Okay.
can pre-order it now. It's available on, I hate saying available on Amazon because you know how we feel about Amazon, but Target, yeah, it's out there. So if you feel so inclined, you know, it's my dream to be a New York Best Times seller.
Okay.
So the more pre-orders we get in,
The better.
the better.
Will help to make that happen. But they
Yeah.
can also probably would be able to maybe pick up a copy at your brick and mortar location.
Yes, yes.
Which is where they can
we're
find other-
located on 25th and Mission. Amazing neighborhood, and yeah, we feel so fortunate to be there. And if you can't venture out to the restaurant, you could get our Manaish flatbreads and these actually at Berkeley Bowl if you live in the East Bay, or Good Eggs if you.
Home
Shop
delivery.
online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
home delivery service.
Yeah.
Awesome. So did everyone have fun? Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on a Friday night.
Friday night. This is where everyone wants to be. You guys got to have an amazing conversation, learn something, learn how to make something, got some bites. I mean, I can't think of a better deal for a Friday night than to be here. Can you all please join me in thanking Reem? And I also just wanted to say that this is our second food event. Did anybody come to the first food event?
With Bryant?
Woo, yes. Repeat. Yes, awesome. The third food event is already scheduled. It's going to be with KQED and Espanol reporter Carlos Cabrera Lomeli. And it's going to be with the young gourmet entrepreneur chef Victor Aguilera, the Bay Area chef that's here. They're going to be in discussion on more food topics for KQED. And we really need people to come and support these KQED live events. These are brand new for the community to have everybody try some food and come out and learn some stuff. So if you all had fun, please sign up for that one and share that. And we'll continue to keep having amazing chefs and restaurateurs come in.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for coming this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Let's head off stage.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect.